Mr. Patrick Francie, how are you today?
I'm awesome, JG, man. How are you?
Oh, you know what? I would have to say it's the best day ever.
Best day ever.
I,
Hey,
I,
listen, man.
I
I'm in
do.
Edmonton. I'm in Edmonton right now, by the way. It's minus 15. I'm hoping it's going to warm up.
Wow, you know what? It is +2 in Peterborough today. It's beautiful, and we poured some concrete on the Park Hill project yesterday. So it's actually perfect timing because now we've poured the concrete, so we're good to go. And the concrete can cure up to -5, the type of concrete we use. So we're good. Don't even need heat lamps. Don't need insulated blankets. It's a great day in the construction world.
Save some money. Awesome. Well done. Hey,
And
so talk about saving money.
you know me, Patrick. I enjoy saving money. Like I like.
Yes, you certainly do. Frugal. I use that respectfully. Frugal. But talking about frugal and missing and saving money, let's talk about missing millions.
Yes. Welcome to the to this next episode. I think, Patrick, this is episode 4, if you will, segment number 4, Missing Millions. And this is a big one. In fact, this episode may go down in the record books in terms of no, but I'm being serious, in terms of one of the most important ones.
It is. Oh, yeah. No, there's no doubt that, this is a very important conversation.
Yeah.
This is an eye-opening conversation for me because we've done this particular presentation live, face-to-face with, one-on-one, one on a few and one on many. And it has really been landing like lots of light bulbs going on over people's heads on this one, the insights that they've been gaining.
All right. Well, let's get right into it, Patrick. I know that that this is there's some depth to this conversation, so it's going to take us 15, 20 minutes to get through this, most likely. So let's jump into it. And you.
Well, no, let's not, JG. Let's not assume that everybody understands missing millions.
Very good. Very good point. Yes.
We've got viewers that are wondering what the heck are we talking about? Missing millions. And so let's give them a context. You lead the way.
So Missing Millions, folks, is a segment that we like to do, Patrick and I. We've done it live in the Rain Room. We've done it at the Acre Real Estate Investor Summit with 500 real estate investors. We've done it in member meetings across the country where we do it on Facebook Live, like you're seeing it now. And Missing Millions is the concept of real estate investors missing millions and reasons why we miss millions of dollars in real estate. Reasons why, and the whole context for the show is, if you could learn on some things that I missed millions on, then maybe you won't miss those millions. And if I can learn from what Patrick's missed millions on, then maybe I won't miss those millions. Because the fact is, Patrick, when you look at mentorship, every layer of mentorship speeds up the learning process. So, for example, if you go back to the person, one of my main mentors that has mentored me for a decade, I learned from him and he learned from his mentor who's been doing it for 50 years. So what it took his mentor to achieve in 50 years, he achieved it in about 25 years. And what it took him to achieve in 25 years, I achieved it in about 8 years. So, and every layer of mentorship condenses and compresses decades into days. That's where the saying compressing decades into days comes from. And that's the purpose of Missing Millions, is to compress decades into days.
It is. And, I want to just pick in on something that you said there is in the learning. And I want to push this out and I want to shine a light on this a little bit because, mentors and following those who've gone before us, they are giving us insights. We are learning. But, having worked with you now for a couple of years and observing you and having interviewed so many on the Everyday Millionaire podcast, it's just not learning. It's taking that learning and putting it into action. Yeah. And that's something that I've observed that you're really, really good at, really brilliant at. But also the guests on the podcast, when I'm having conversations with them, it isn't just about learning. They're literally learning and moving forward, taking action with that knowledge. And that is it seems so obvious to state that, but we in the business that we're in, we're seeing people across the industry that are learning. They're going to free meetup groups. They're doing all of these things, but they're really not taking action. They're just being busy learning.
Yeah.
And so this is a little bit actually speaks into the conversation that we're about to have.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're 100% right because, and we're actually going to talk about the growth zone today. And there's something that happens when individuals learn something new. There's endorphins that are released in the brain. There's a chemical reaction that happens when you learn something. And then people equate learning to doing. And I call that the learning doing gap. Learning and then not doing can become a very frustrating cycle. So if you want to know, and I know the viewers are asking themselves, am I in that gap right now? Here's how you know if you're in that gap. Information without application leads to frustration. So if you're frustrated, if you're just like, I just don't get it, I don't understand why I'm not, you get really frustrated and almost angry about it, that's because you're not doing, you're just learning all the time. So this Missing Millions is not just about, and I'm so glad you brought it up, Patrick, because this segment is not about teaching you more stuff. It's about having you do things differently, having you show up differently, having had these conversations.
Yes, 100%. And so I'm excited to get this. And, I love all these little riffs that we are we have the propensity to do. As you're talking, I'm taking notes, by the way, because I'm going, oh yeah, I want to bring this up. I want to bring this up. So anyway, so that's great.
All right, should we dive in, Patrick?
I think we should.
Let's do it.
Now, this conversation is really interesting because, in this particular slide, the 4 dimensions of trust. I learned this, by the way, from an old friend of mine, Alan Kahn and Carrie Granger. And I don't know where they got it from, but this is such a powerful slide, and it's powerful for a number of reasons. Let me go through it, and then I'll circle back. Now, when we look at the 4 dimensions of trust, we have to understand a couple of things. First off, when we look at trust, we consider the obvious. Is the person telling the truth? So whether we are actually looking at a JG and we're having a conversation with somebody, one of the filters that we're looking at it through is going, is this person telling the truth? But I want you to just take a moment, the viewers to take a moment to say, we're being viewed with the same set of filters on the other side of the table, so to speak. So we have to look at how we view somebody and how we're being viewed. And when we go through these dimensions of trust, it'll open up a door of understanding. So the truth is the first one. In the 4 dimensions of trust, is that individual, or are we telling the truth? Huge. That's the one that most people know. But then we break it down a little bit further, and we also have to consider that individual must be, is telling the truth. We assess that. But we then have to say, are they reliable? Are they doing what they say they're going to do? Can we trust them to show up on time? Can we trust them to follow through on what they said they were going to do? So reliability is another dimension of trust.
And you're right that's really important, Patrick, because if someone's always telling the truth but they're not reliable, it chips away at the trust, doesn't it?
It does. Because then you also start to question, are they telling the truth? And if they say they're going to do something and they're not reliable, guess what? They're not really telling the truth either. So it starts to break down the trust. It's those individuals that are always fashionably late. Well, you may think that's okay. You may even think it's a little funny to be fashionably late. But there's a part of reliability that says you're not really telling the truth. I'll be there at 10 a.m. You show up at 10:15. It's all eroding. To your point, it's chipping away.
And trust. What's really interesting, and this is how Missing Millions works, folks. We riff around and we go from we bounce. So, but here's what I'm picking up on, Patrick, and we talk about this in Elite 52, and we also talk about this in Money Magic. But trust is not black or white. It's dimensions of gray. So let's just say having no trust is white and having ultimate trust is black. No one's ever on you could be on the white. You may never get to full black. But the question is how close to the black are you, and how gray is it? So thinking about the gray zone in terms of trust is very interesting.
Well, it is very, very interesting. And I'm going to throw a real curveball when we get through this that is going to kind of really open up the door to holy crap, I never even looked at it that way. So, we talk about truth, we talk reliability, and then we talk about competency. And all of those come together because we're looking at the individual. We're saying, well, what's the level of competency? They could be telling the truth. We could believe that they're reliable, but are they competent? Are we believing that they're competent in being able to do what they say they're going to do. So competency is a really big one when we're examining the commitments that others are making to us, or the commitments that we're making to others. And I'll open up this just a little bit in the competency part of it. I've noticed with some of my team, because as I've got businesses, and as you do, and what happens is that we push our team to do more. We want to empower. We want to get them moving forward and learning and growing. But when they hit their own level of competency, when they're pushing their ceiling of the limitations around their own competency, that's also an interesting observation that I've had, that some people don't really have that level of competency, so they're not trusting themselves, which is a whole different conversation.
But it's a key part of trust is, how much you trust yourself is a big conversation of how the others will see you as well, isn't it?
It is huge. And that's kind of the curveball in all of this, because we can talk about how people are viewing us, how we're viewing people, but underlying all of this is the 4 dimensions of trust of ourselves. And are we telling ourselves the truth? Are we truly being reliable to ourselves? And are we pushing our ceiling of limitations around competency and not trusting that we can pull it off? Yeah. And that's a really big conversation for people to have with themselves.
Yeah, very well said.
And then heart. Do the people care? Do we care? Do they care? And having heart is sometimes the people seem to care a lot, and it actually can blur the truth, the reliability, and the competent. Having heart and really being sincere is one of those things that some people can seem to pull off. So that trust, that heart component of it, we have to ask ourselves, do we care? Does that person care? And then is that the truth? So when we look at the 4 dimensions of trust, it isn't just, are they telling the truth? It isn't that simple. These 4 dimensions open up a door to a whole different conversation of understanding how we're assessing and how we're being assessed.
Now, Patrick, you and I have been having a lot of conversations with members and with real estate investors that are going to be attending the upcoming Money Magic event in January in Vancouver, and in April we're doing it in Toronto. We also have a live stream, and we've been having the conversation of trust a lot, because when it comes to Money Magic, when it comes to investment partners, when it comes to joint venture capital, when it comes to raising funds, this is at the heart of the whole thing. This is the beginning of the conversation.
Yeah. And it's so interesting that, some people say, well, I need to know more. I need more tactics. I need more strategies. Well, maybe, but when you're raising capital, you're being viewed through this filter, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. And we've had these conversations. I mean, I've been in member meetings where, there's whatever, a couple hundred people in the room, and I'm talking to somebody who has more capital than they can place, and they've been raising capital. They haven't even been really working hard at it, and capital's pouring towards them. And I've had others that have walked up and said, Patrick, I need what do I need to do to raise capital? Because I just can't seem to raise capital. And it's an interesting insight to have in the same hour, have a conversation with 2-3 different people and totally different results. And it isn't about the doing always. It is truly about how you're showing up within these 4 dimensions of trust.
Yeah, so important, so foundational to all things, isn't it?
Well, and to your point, around Money Magic, we're going to spend a lot of time in that workshop talking about this kind of stuff, because it's so important.
And Money Magic, it's interesting. It's funny that we're talking about Money Magic, because people think at Money Magic, you're going to learn the marketing and how to attract partners to you, and you're going to learn all the things you want to learn. But really, at the crux of it is, by the time you finish the program, what you're going to get is you're going to trust yourself so that others can trust. That's really what you're going to get out of the whole thing.
Okay, well, you just gave everybody the key. The answer.
They still got to get there, Patrick.
Nice work. Now, this is this next slide is so interesting, and when we look at RAIN and the evolution of RAIN and where we've come to, and the leadership that my intention is to provide in with the community and of course with our team, and what we operate on as an executive team, this slide is incredibly important. And this is really about encouraging people to consider their ethos. And when we look at, if you were to look at the definition of ethos, you're really talking in its most basic form, character, who you are, and who you are as an individual, who you are as a team, who you are as an organization. And so the stand that I take for RAIN, and the stand that you as the Chief Growth Officer and our executive team, whether it be Jennifer or Bonnie and Nick and all of our team overall, right down to, and I don't want to say down, but right expanded to all of what we do as a team. And we talk about our ethos, and we talk about energy, and we talk about the community. When I have this conversation live audience, I'm talking about the energy. So who are you? What do you bring to the table? Are you walking into an environment and saying, what can I get from this environment? Or am I bringing energy into saying, what can I bring versus what can I get? And so that energy and being aware of that energy is incredibly important. You know, I know that you and I, when we walk into a room, because of how we're built, all we're doing is bringing energy into a room. We're genetically hardwired, I think, to try and light a room up. What can we bring energetically? And that's us giving. That's the nature of what we do. It's the nature of who we are. And I think this is an important one.
Well, what's interesting about energy, and I'm gonna try to tie this whole thing together, because people listening to this right now, folks, this it could be heavy lifting. At least it could land for you as heavy lifting. Like, wow, this is a lot, and it is a lot. And the fact is that the 4 dimensions of trust, and how much you trust yourself and how much others trust you, affects your energy, and the energy you bring affects the 4 dimensions of trust, doesn't it?
It does. It's incredibly important to understand that. Now, to your point, it could sound a little bit esoteric or really out there. I mean, for us, this is a normal kind of conversation to have. Whether with anybody on our team, this would be a normal conversation to have. Right across the board, everybody gets this. As a matter of fact, we represented this again just in an all-company meeting recently. You know, it's a reminder to everybody who RAIN is as a brand, who they are as individuals, and who they are as leaders in their own community. Because we look at trust as part of our ethos. Now, trust is interesting now, given we just had a conversation that we know trust is 4 dimensions, you know, and it really expands on it. So when we look at, you and I look at the business and the brand called RAIN and what we do and who we are, trust is first and foremost, it's up front for us. And then, of course, we care. You know, that is really 27 years later, RAIN building the community, the culture, the environment for our RAIN members, and for those who are our strategic partners come into contact with us. They have to care. We have to care. We have to have heart. We have to be really about the success of others. You know, when we look at the energy we bring, what are we giving? How are we supporting others in achieving their dreams? And we have to really care sincerely, and we do. Ownership. You know, I've said this, and I'm going to quit saying it effectively January 2020. This was a huge lesson for me personally over the past couple of years, which is ownership. Taking and owning all parts of your life. Whatever you've got going on in your business and in your life is a reflection of and your responsibility and your accountability. So whether it's great, and this is really cool, amazing things going on in my life, and I'm going to take credit for that because I can really own it. I've in the past maybe disowned a little bit about the shit that goes on in your life and the bad news. I want to blame. I've blamed others in the past, or I've let it go. No more. I'm going to take a stand for, I'll own all of the great things that happen in my life, but I'm going to own the other half of that equation, which is all the things that I don't really like. I got to also take responsibility on that. Ownership is such a huge conversation.
Yeah, totally is.
And soul, you know, heart and soul. We talk about it. For me, in this conversation around ethos, soul is actually all of those other things called energy, trust, heart, and ownership, was really wrapping our arms around all of what we do. And that's the soul of our ethos.
Now, if you look at, Patrick, if you look at RAIN, you know, RAIN's been around for 27 years. RAIN's ethos has, you know, in many ways, much of it has stayed the same and much of it has shifted. And there's nothing right or wrong about that, by the way, folks. But if you think to all the different components of ethos, from energy and trust, you know, various, and this is what attracts members to us, is if your ethos resonates with our ethos, then you have a beautiful match there. You have a great, you know that you're in the right place. And that's why members come into the room, they come to Money Magic, they come to Elite 52, they take action on the real estate investing in Canada course, and they think, wow, I'm really in the right place. It feels good to me. That's because our ethos matches up.
Well, it's this a bit of a, you know, for listeners that have followed us this far, is that the important conversation around.
Maybe, you're right, Patrick. Maybe nobody's listening anymore. You
Yeah,
know,
we could be just talking to ourselves.
actually, folks, if you're still listening, can you like give us a thumbs up or like put some comments below so we know that you're listening? That'd be great.
So the lesson in all of this is that, you know, what I've learned a lot, and, you know, 35 years in business, I haven't stopped learning. I'm so far from knowing what I need to know to go to where I want to go to. But here's the thing about ethos. You know, as the CEO of the Real Estate Investment Network, you know, I choose the direction of the ship, and you know, my clarity in that direction is really important, and I own it all. But here's the thing, as I create the ethos of the brand, the ethos of our environment, then I have a team that can steer the ship, a team that can operate the ship, a team that can keep the ship moving forward in a really powerful way. And so ethos is so important to be aligned with your team, because as you're sailing some rough waters, guess what? You have to have all of these things in place to succeed, to actually be able to get that ship moving forward and doing it in the right direction and get through the rough waters.
Did you say get that ship moving forward or get that shit moving forward? I guess it doesn't matter, does it?
You can take that and move, and you actually can apply either of those. I'm choosing ship right now, but yeah, on certain things, it's like, let's get this shit out of the way and get moving forward. Okay.
Awesome. So Patrick, this all leads us to essentially, I don't want to say the biggest part of this conversation, because it's not the biggest part, because this is all a big conversation, but the following couple slides with regards to comfort zone and what zone people are in really is impactful to people, because you will be able to see yourself, folks, within one of these zones, and you'll be able to analyze where you're at and where you're going to go, and you're also going to analyze where you've fallen off over the course of time.
100%. And we've heard of the comfort zone. You know, years ago we worked with a guy by the name of Dr. Paul Stoltz, who, you know, talked about adversity and facing adversity. And we looked at the comfort zone, and he would refer to it as, you know, camping, you know, being a happy camper, where you're just hanging out in your comfort zone. It really feels safe. You feel like you're in control. But here's the result of that. It's low risk, yes, but it's also low reward. And for many, and I would say most, I don't know that, but anecdotally, most, it's a really low satisfaction. You're just kind of going through the treadmill of life without perhaps purpose, without significance, and it's really, really comfortable. But are you being true to who you are as a human in terms of your contribution? That's not to make anybody wrong, it's just to examine it. But when we're in the world of real estate, and real estate entrepreneur, and just being a business owner, what we've come to understand is that when we're bumping up against the fear zone, which is that area of resistance where we become indecisive, we're self-confidence, lots of excuses. That's the ownership part of it. Rather than own it, we have excuses. We get into analysis paralysis, and we can't seem to change. We don't want to, and we're really concerned about what others may think. But when we hit that fear zone, guess what we have a tendency to want to do? Go back to what's comfortable. Now, in this conversation, what we're asking you to consider is, how do you step into the learning zone? Now, when we get into the learning zone, there is an area of comfort there, and because you're just learning. But when you take it on as if I'm going to take it and apply it, that's a different conversation. But that's us seeking. We're embracing change. We're wanting to embrace change. We're actually wanting to try new things. We're putting on our leadership hat or our leadership shoes, and we're learning how to be leaders, because we are. At every level, you're a leader somewhere. And if you can do that consciously, or you can do it by accident, but ultimately it's better to do it when you're conscious, mindful, thoughtful. We're creating relationships, we're training and developing new skills, and we're listening with an open mind. Like hopefully our listeners are listening to this with an open mind.
If they're still listening at all.
If they're still listening at all.
So
now, is there anything you want to say around here right now?
100%, Patrick. I mean, when I saw this diagram, I mean, intellectually, I understood this diagram. I've been working with this diagram for many years, but this particular diagram this way is new to me. And when I saw it, I thought to myself, that is so perfect, because you will notice, folks, that as real estate investors and as business owners and as you know, career-oriented people, it doesn't matter what you're into. The point is that you're always trying to go from comfort zone. You're trying to grow, and you're running up against the fear zone. And Patrick said it best, which is you're gonna essentially hit that barrier and you're gonna fall back. And between the fear zone and the learning zone is what I've been trained to consider and to call the terror barrier. That's the terror barrier. That's where you bounce back into comfort zone, or you make the conscious decision to go beyond it. And there's only one way to get from the fear zone to the learning zone, folks, which is you got to bust through the barrier. You literally got to go through it. You can't escape it. You can't go around it. You can't pretend it's not there. You just go through the damn thing. And it's a conscious decision. Now, the thing, and I don't want to go too esoteric with this, Patrick, so please slow me down if I am, but the thing is this is all subconscious stuff. Most people don't even know this is happening. So if this is the first time you're seeing this, give yourself a pat on the back. You now know what's happening. When you go to submit an offer on a property, when you go to do a deal and you get butterflies in your stomach, you think, I'm not so sure, and then you talk yourself out of it, that's you hitting the terror barrier in the fear zone and then bouncing back into your comfort zone. That's what that is. So once you get to the learning zone, this is the best part, Patrick, because people in the learning zone feel the emotion is, I've done it, but you haven't yet, because you're not there. You're not there, folks. If we stopped right here, not a whole lot would change for your situation. Your financial freedom really wouldn't change that much. You wouldn't see actual results yet, but it's coming, isn't it, Patrick?
It is. And just to qualify that, because here's where it is, as we go into the next zone, the key to understand here is that if you bust through the fear zone just into the learning zone, you feel like you've taken action. You feel like you're doing something, and you are, but you're really not gone to the next level, which is this growth zone where you're creating. You understand your purpose. You're taking focused action because you're applying what you've learned. You're now feeling confident as a leader. And even if you don't feel confident, you're providing leadership because you understand the 4 dimensions of trust, for example. You are surrounding yourself with a like-minded community. Every entrepreneur, every real estate entrepreneur knows or will discover that when you're in a like-minded community, when you're surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals, when you're putting yourself in a culture of support, when you're setting yourself up in an environment to succeed, you start to move forward, and that's where opportunities start to show up. So if opportunities aren't showing up for you, if you're saying, I'm just not, there's no opportunities out there, you have to look in the mirror and going, what is it about me that isn't seeing the opportunities, or why are the opportunities not showing up for me? It isn't because they're not there. It's because of how you're showing up or what you're not seeing. Now I'm going to just stretch this one more dimension. And that is this, is that we're always going through a cycle. So let me give you an example. JG, you've grown your real estate portfolio, you've grown businesses, you've done multi-million-dollar deals, you've sold businesses, you've been very, very successful. We've both had some really big wins in business and in real estate over our careers. But each time we go to the next level, we hit the fear zone. Now, then we want to retreat to the comfort zone, which is different for us. Right?
Yeah, it's the same comfort zone. It's just at a different level.
It's just a different level. Yeah. And it's our comfort zone may be going from 60 employees to 100, or going from, multi-millions in revenue to a multi-million dollar deal, which makes us want to retreat it back to our comfort zone. But we don't. We go through the learning zone and we go through the growth zone. It's a cycle. We retreat back, we move forward. But here's the fundamental difference. When this is out in front of you, you get to say, oh, I see exactly what's going on for me. I'm going to a new level of growth, and guess what? I'm now back into my fear, which makes me want to sit back and be comfortable. And so this is an understanding and an evolution of how you're holding what's next for you in your entrepreneur or in your business or your real estate portfolio growing it.
The great news about all of this, folks, is that awareness and understanding is 99% of this. And now you have it. If you didn't know before, now you do. So congrats, because that's 99% of it. The next 1%, which is the biggest challenge, is you just got to understand that you're programmed and you're biologically programmed to stay in your comfort zone. So that comfort zone is like a vortex. Actually, we should change the slide and call it the comfort zone vortex. That'd be a good idea.
That'd be good.
Right? It's a vortex. It sucks. It continues to suck you back. Its stories are playing in your mind. Childhood upbringing, things that have happened that haven't worked out because you tried to go through the fear zone that one time and it spit you back out. All those various things. And if you think you're alone in that, by the way, join the club, right, Patrick? I mean,
the club. The good news is though, but hey, I think the good news for us, JG, is as an executive team and as a business overall, and being in a community like we're in. I mean, we travel the country. We're talking to some pretty astute investors and some really amazing people. So we're constantly having conversations that could either shut us down going, holy cow, I could never do that, or actually it opens up for us and going, holy cow, what a great insight. And but that's because we're in this conversation. We're not afraid to have the conversation. We're not afraid to share where we are in our own kind of travels of the, what did we call it? The growth vortex? What did you just call it?
The comfort zone vortex.
Or the comfort zone vortex, yes.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, Patrick. So as RAIN members, assuming you're a RAIN member, and if you're not a RAIN member, you should become a RAIN member. But what I would say is this is where, this becomes a conversation. Like Patrick, you and I talk about this all the time. Every day there's an element of this diagram that's in our conversation, which is parts of our lives and parts of our business, we're in the comfort zone. Other parts, we're in the fear zone. Other parts, we're in the learning zone. And other parts, we're in the growth zone. And we're just always trying to push forward, trying to push through. And we're keeping our circle of support. And if you don't know about the circle of support, you really got to tune into what Stephanie's been talking about on the Champion's Journey. Because our circles of support, we're just having this conversation in terms of where we're at with the various parts of our lives.
It's true. And, when we launched the Elite 52 coaching program, and RAIN members are aware of that, but the Elite 52 coaching program is really supporting those individuals that are part of the program in taking this on, really owning it and then living into it in a really powerful and mindful way. So when we launched Elite 52, we knew it was because there was a gap for many individuals. And now we just had a interview with some really successful RAIN members. They've been RAIN members for 15 years, have really created a powerful portfolio, and they got into the Elite 52 coaching program. Why? Because this is what they're bumping up against, and this is where they need support. So they're putting themselves in an environment for success around that. Yeah. So at every level, this keeps showing up.
Yeah, have a look, folks. If you're still watching by now, by the way, congrats if you are, because this is the meat and potato. This is amazing. So if you are still watching, go to our Facebook page. Go have a look at the Facebook Live we did with Jules McKenzie and Angie. Phenomenal. But what's interesting, Patrick, is the more, I don't want to say astute, the more aware you become of this. The only thing that changes is you're just quicker to identify which phase you're in, which zone you're in, and you're just quicker to go ask help to get through it.
Well, and you know why? Because if you take on the 4 dimensions of trust, when you have that awareness and you own it, guess what? You take responsibility for busting through it. And then you ask for help, you ask for guidance, you read, you study, you do what you need to do to bust through and
totally.
And to the next level.
Well, I'd love folks to get your comments on whether this content is extremely powerful. Patrick and I both have studied this stuff intensely. Patrick probably definitely more than I have, but this is the secret weapon of RAIN, which is most for real estate organizations, Patrick, real estate education companies, real estate organizations. Nobody talked about this stuff. They only want to talk about cash flow. They don't want to talk about fix and flips. But this is what holding you back. It's not more information. It's this.
And can I throw a cheap shot? They only want to sell you real estate. And we're not selling real estate. We're selling you and empowering you to go invest in real estate in a powerful way, in a mindful, thoughtful way, with getting through and being part of the growth zone on an ongoing basis.
So so I guess if I could do a shameless plug, which is if you're thinking, folks, that you're in, now you can identify where you're at and you can say, okay, I want to get to the next level, then you may want to consider some additional resources from RAIN. If you're not a member, you should become a member. If you are a member and you're looking to get past the fear zone on a particular thing, Elite 52 is perfect for you. It's the Get Unstuck coaching program we've created for RAIN members. By the way, if you're not a RAIN member, you can't get Elite 52 because it's exclusive. It's a members only program. And then things like around, if you're trying to raise capital, you're going to go through every one of these stages when it comes to raising capital. So Money Magic is built around this as well. I mean, if this resonates for you, you're going to be seeing a lot more of this. And I hope that's a good thing, Patrick.
Yeah. Well, if you're still watching, I want to say thank you for following through and hanging in there for us. We think we're really interesting, but that's not always the case, JG.
You know what? I think you're interesting, Patrick. That's for sure.
Listen, JG, thanks for taking the time to host this and go through this. It's always good.
Thank you so much, Patrick. It was awesome. And thank you, folks, again for watching. We appreciate it. Please like, share this. And we would really appreciate if this got out. And we'll see you at the next RAIN member meeting or the next.
Let's ask if you got something out of this. Why don't you comment? Tell us what you learned in this particular segment and about missing millions. Maybe where you've gotten your own way and go, holy cow, when I reflect and realize that I've been stuck in my fear zone, stuck in the learning zone, stuck in the comfort zone. What did you learn? You've only been missing millions.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.